You ever notice how some people walk into your life like a quiet storm? They study your light, they admire your strength, but instead of rising with you, they try to dim you. Today, we're going to talk about why narcissists fall for strong women and why they then try to break them. Not to blame, not to shame, but to understand, because understanding is the first step toward freedom. So let's take a breath and walk through this together. Strength. It's a strange thing. People think it's loud, flashy, something that echoes through a room, but real strength, especially the kind carried by women who've been shaped by life, by loss, by rebuilding, comes with this quiet gravity. It's the way she walks into a space without trying to take it. It's the way she listens more than she speaks. It's the way she knows her worth without announcing it. And that kind of strength has a pull, a real one. It draws people in, especially those who feel hollow inside. People who walk around wearing confidence like it's a jacket 2 sizes too big, hoping nobody notices it doesn't fit. People who crave validation like oxygen but don't know how to create it within themselves. People who look at someone grounded, whole, steady, and feel an ache, a longing, a desperation because they don't have any of that inside. A narcissist sees a strong woman and feels something almost electric, like standing in front of a sunrise after years in darkness. They're drawn to her certainty, her independence, her compassion. She seems like a cure, a lighthouse, a warm fire in the middle of winter. And at first that pull feels beautiful. It feels magical. If you're the strong woman in that equation, you think, wow, someone finally sees me, someone finally appreciates the parts of myself I fought so hard to build. But the truth is more complicated. The narcissist isn't drawn to her because of love. They're drawn because her strength fills the cracks in their own identity. Her emotional stability gives them a sense of balance they've never mastered. Her confidence becomes something they want to absorb like heat from the sun. They want to stand close enough to feel strong by proximity. It's like giving a thirsty person a drink, except their thirst is bottomless. I once heard about a woman who had this unshakable sense of calm. She worked long hours, supported her family, volunteered on weekends, not because she wanted praise, but because she believed in showing up for life. A man started pursuing her intensely. Flowers on random days, long messages about how incredible she was. He told her he'd never met someone so grounded, so capable, so radiant, and she believed him. Who wouldn't? We're human. Compliments feel good, especially when they come from someone who seems attentive, thoughtful, present. But over time, she noticed something. Whenever she succeeded, he became tense. Whenever she expressed an opinion, he grew defensive. Whenever she stood her ground, he seemed threatened. It wasn't her beauty he had been drawn to, it was her glow. And once he realized he couldn't bottle it, control it, or make it exclusively his, that attraction turned into resentment. That's the paradox. The very strength that pulls them in becomes the strength they fear. Deep down, a narcissist carries an emptiness shaped by insecurity. It's a vacuum. It consumes everything but gives nothing back. They admire strength, but they can't stand being overshadowed by it. They crave connection, but only if it feeds their identity. They want to feel important, superior, irreplaceable. And a strong woman, by her nature, doesn't revolve around anyone. She has her own life, her own dreams, her own backbone. This threatens the fragile world the narcissist built inside themselves. So the attraction becomes a mission, not to love her, not to cherish her, but to possess her strength. They start testing, not big things at first, small ones, a comment about how she's too independent, a joke about her being intimidating, an observation that she doesn't really need anyone. At first she laughs it off, but those comments aren't random, they're signals. They're the first cracks of someone trying to figure out where to slip in the wedge. Because for the narcissist, falling for a strong woman isn't a soft landing. It's a challenge, a psychological puzzle. They think, if I can win her over, if I can be the one she leans on, then I must be extraordinary. Her strength becomes their trophy, their proof, their borrowed identity. And this is where the emotional storm begins. Because a strong woman, for all her resilience, is still human. She loves deeply. She gives generously. She believes in people. Her strength isn't just toughness, it's empathy. It's the belief that people can grow, can change, can become better. She sees the lost child inside the narcissist and thinks, maybe I can help. Maybe I can heal this person. But healing is not what the narcissist seeks. They seek what they've always sought: admiration, attention, validation. And when the strong woman cannot endlessly supply these things because she has her own life, her own needs, her own boundaries, the narcissist feels betrayed. Imagine holding on to a rope that's fraying. That's what the narcissist feels when a strong woman doesn't bend to their emotional demands. They panic, they resent, they lash out. Because she was supposed to fill the emptiness, not expose it. She was supposed to be the answer, not a reminder of the questions inside them. Her strength, once intoxicating, becomes a mirror, reflecting everything they refuse to confront. People who lack inner stability are drawn to those who have it. It's natural, it's human. But when that person is a narcissist, the attraction isn't harmonious, it's parasitic. They want the benefits of her strength without the responsibility of building their own. But here's the deeper truth. A strong woman didn't become strong by accident. Her strength was carved from experiences, disappointments, heartbreaks, hard lessons, triumphs. She earned it. She fought for it. She protected it. And that strength is not something you can take. You can dim it for a moment, maybe, if she trusts the wrong person. You can shake it if she starts doubting herself, but you can't erase it. Because strength that's forged within cannot be stolen. It can only be forgotten temporarily. Narcissists fall for strong women because they feel that strength in their bones. It reminds them of everything they wish they were, everything they fear they'll never become, everything they try to fake but can't create. And that's why the attraction is so intense. Because strength, real strength, is like gravity. It pulls at the lost, the searching, the unstable, but it also reveals them. And when someone empty inside comes close to someone full, the contrast is impossible to ignore. That's why they fall, and why the fall so often turns into an attempt to control, diminish, or break. But the strength was always hers, not theirs, and it remains hers long after they're gone. There's something powerful about watching a person stand in their truth. Someone who knows who they are, not because life went easy on them, but because they have been through enough storms to understand what they will and will not accept. A strong woman carries that kind of presence. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't wave it around like a banner. It's just there, steady, grounded, undeniable. And for most people, that kind of strength is inspiring. It brings comfort. It feels like safety. But for someone who carries insecurity like a shadow, someone driven by the need to dominate instead of connect, that same strength doesn't feel comforting at all. It feels threatening. It feels like a spotlight shining on everything they're trying to hide. A narcissist doesn't interpret strength the way healthy people do. To them, strength isn't something to admire. It's something to conquer, something to own, something they can place in a box and say, this belongs to me. I decide what it does. I decide how bright it shines. That's the twisted part. They're drawn to the light, but they can't rest until they feel like they control the source of it. I knew someone once who told me a story about her relationship with a man who was captivated by her from day one. She was independent, smart, passionate, someone who didn't pretend to be smaller just to make others comfortable. In the beginning, he watched her with this kind of awe, like he was meeting a force of nature. He told her she was special, rare, powerful, and he meant it at first. But the moment she didn't agree with him on something trivial, something as small as what restaurant they should go to, he froze. Not visibly, but internally. She didn't know it then, but that moment triggered something deep in him, not anger, not disappointment, something heavier, the realization that she had a voice that wasn't his to control. It starts small, always a subtle push, a gentle correction, a comment disguised as concern. You're so used to doing everything alone. You're too opinionated. Sometimes you don't really have to be that strong all the time, you know. On the surface, these sound like suggestions from someone who cares, but beneath them is a message that grows sharper with each passing day. Your strength makes me uncomfortable. I need to weaken it to feel secure. For a narcissistic mind, the world is divided into two categories: people they can control and people they can't. And a strong woman sits firmly in the second category. But the narcissist doesn't walk away. No, they take it as a challenge. It's almost like watching someone try to tame a wild horse, not out of love for the horse, but out of a desperate need to prove something to themselves. The narcissist thinks, if I can make her rely on me, if I can make her second guess herself, if I can make her shift her world around me, then I win. Control isn't a side effect for them. It's the goal. They start redefining reality in small ways, not dramatically, subtly enough that even a strong woman might overlook the signs at first. She says something with clarity, and he replies, "That's not what you meant." She sets a boundary, and he counters with, "You're overreacting." She talks about something that matters to her, and he says, "You're too sensitive about this." These aren't disagreements, they're attempts to chip away at her internal compass. Strength for her has always meant trusting herself. Strength for him is getting her to trust him more than she trusts herself. Think about that for a moment. That's not love, that's strategy. People often misunderstand narcissistic control. They think it looks like shouting, slamming doors, grand displays of dominance. But the most dangerous control is quiet. It's disguised as patience, concern, logic. It's the steady erosion of someone's autonomy. It's the gradual dismantling of their identity, disguised as care. A narcissist doesn't need to raise their voice. All they need is to make her doubt hers. The irony is painful. Her strength is what attracted them, and her strength is what they insist on breaking. There's a reason for that. Every time she stands tall, they feel smaller. Every time she speaks her truth, they feel exposed. Every time she shows independence, they feel irrelevant. And irrelevance is their deepest fear. Most people accept that love is about partnership, balance, mutual respect. But a narcissist sees love as a hierarchy. Someone must be on top, and it must be them. They can't imagine a relationship where both people stand in their own power. That feels like competition, not connection. So they try to pull her down, not because she did something wrong, but because her strength disrupts their illusion of superiority. There was another story shared with me once about a woman who was confident, secure, successful in her career. She had worked for years to build a life she could be proud of. Her partner, a narcissist, started out supportive of her goals. He said he admired her drive, her discipline, her vision. But the more she accomplished, the more distant he became. When she celebrated a work milestone, he responded with silence. When she shared good news, he found something negative to focus on. When she expressed joy, he questioned it, dissected it, minimized it. One day, she asked him why he never seemed happy for her. His response, "Your success makes me feel invisible." But instead of working on himself, instead of confronting that insecurity, he projected it onto her. He decided the solution wasn't for him to grow, it was for her to shrink. That's the kind of challenge her strength becomes to a narcissist, a reminder of everything they refuse to heal. So when a strong woman speaks clearly, they interrupt. When she makes choices, they question them. When she shines, they dim the lights. Not because they hate her strength, but because they fear what it reveals about them. A narcissist sees strength as something that must be contained, managed, controlled, because if they can't control it, they feel powerless, and they cannot tolerate that feeling. It rattles them. It digs into the places they've spent their whole lives protecting, the fragile parts of themselves they pretend don't exist. They don't want a partner. They want proof of their dominance. But here's the thing about strong women. The more someone tries to control them, the more they learn about themselves. The more someone tries to silence them, the more their intuition sharpens. And the more someone tries to break them, the more they understand the value of the strength they carry. A narcissist may see strength as a challenge to control, but in the end, that strength is exactly what sets her free. There's a moment at the beginning that feels almost unreal, like you've stepped into a dream someone painted just for you. The air feels lighter. Conversations flow without effort. Everything they say seems to land exactly where your heart has been waiting. That's the start of the cycle. This thing that looks like devotion but is really calculation wrapped in charm. It begins with idealization, and if you've never experienced it, it can feel like a rush. Like someone finally saw the universe inside you and decided it was the most extraordinary thing they'd ever witnessed. When a narcissist meets a strong woman, they don't just admire her. They put her on a pedestal so high she can see the curve of the world. They romanticize her independence. They praise her intelligence. They make her feel like she's a miracle that walked into their life at exactly the right time. And here's the tricky part. They're not lying. Not in the beginning. In those early moments, the admiration is real, almost intoxicating. They're swept up in her strength, her presence, her confidence. It fills something in them that's been empty for a long time, maybe forever. They shine a spotlight on her and it feels warm. It feels like being chosen. It feels like finally someone gets it. They memorize her favorite things. They echo her values. They mirror her dreams. They make promises so tender they feel like they're carved from sincerity itself. And because she's strong and empathetic and authentic, she lets her guard down just a little. Why wouldn't she? When someone adores who you are, when they pay attention, when they show up with intensity and devotion, it touches even the strongest heart. It feels safe. It feels meaningful. But idealization is never the end. It's just the bait. Slowly, almost invisibly, the shift begins. It doesn't come with a thunderstorm. It comes in small fractures, a strange look when she expresses an opinion, a teasing comment that stings a little too much, a sudden withdrawal that feels like someone turned off the lights in a room she didn't know had a switch. This is where devaluation begins. It's subtle at first, a small criticism hidden beneath a smile, a dismissive tone disguised as a joke, a moment of coldness explained away as stress. And because she's patient and understanding, because strong women often are, she gives grace. She rationalizes. She thinks everyone has an off day. She tries to see the best in them. She assumes the bond they built means something real. But the shift doesn't stop, it deepens. This is the stage where the narcissist starts to feel threatened by the very qualities they once adored. Her strength, which once mesmerized them, now makes them feel overshadowed. Her independence feels like rejection. Her confidence feels like competition. Her boundaries feel like defiance. And so they push. They question her decisions. They withdraw affection. They create confusion where there was once clarity. They distort conversations so she starts doubting herself instead of questioning them. Devaluation is psychological erosion, not an earthquake, a slow, steady wearing down of her foundation. It's the moment she says something with certainty, and they respond, "I don't think that's what you meant," or she brings up something that hurt her, and they say, "You're remembering it wrong," or she tries to explain her feelings, and they counter with, "You're too sensitive." One woman once described it like this: "It felt like reality kept changing shape around him, and somehow I always ended up being the one who apologized." That's not love, that's conditioning. The narcissist chips away at her confidence because a strong woman who knows her own worth cannot be controlled, and control is the true fuel behind their behavior. So piece by piece, they begin dismantling the image they built of her, except now, instead of admiration, they target insecurity. Their tone changes, their praise disappears, their affection becomes a reward she has to earn. And because she still remembers the person from the beginning, the idealization stage, she keeps trying. That's the hook. That's the trap. She believes deep down that if she can just communicate better, love harder, understand more deeply, she can get back to the beginning. She doesn't know yet that the beginning was a performance, not a foundation. And then comes the breakdown. This part isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like the last ember of a fire dying out. Sometimes it's explosive, as if all the resentment they've been storing finally breaks the surface. Sometimes it's cold, emotionless, calculated. This is the phase where they withdraw everything they once gave. Validation, gone. Support, vanished. Patience, non-existent. Affection, only offered when it benefits them. They stop listening. They stop caring. They stop pretending. And she, the strong woman, starts thinking something is wrong with her, that she changed, that she became too emotional, too demanding, too complicated. What she doesn't realize is that this feeling is the goal of the cycle. Her confusion is their control. Her self-doubt is their leverage. Her emotional exhaustion is their victory. But the really painful part, she still remembers the idealized version of them, the one who looked at her like she was made of constellations, the one who promised the world, the one who seemed to understand her soul in a way no one else ever had. And because the memory of that beginning is so bright, she keeps trying to reconcile it with the person standing in front of her now. But the two people were never the same. Only one was real. The breakdown often ends in one of two ways. She finally hits a moment where she sees the pattern clearly, or the narcissist discards her because she's no longer easy to control. Either way, the ending hurts. But the truth is, it's never the end of her. A strong woman may bend. She may collapse into silence for a while. She may look at her reflection and not fully recognize herself. But she will rebuild, because her strength was never borrowed from them. It was always hers. The cycle of idealization, devaluation, and breakdown isn't a reflection of her worth. It's a reflection of their emptiness. She was never too much. She was simply too powerful for someone who only knows how to love in ways that destroy. And when she walks away, truly walks away, she doesn't return lighter. She returns wiser, sharper, more aware, more grounded. Because in the end, the cycle doesn't define her. It reveals her resilience. There's a difficult truth that's hard to speak out loud, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Some people don't want to love you. They want to possess you. They want to mold you, shape you, contain you. They don't want a partner. They want a version of you that's easier to manage, easier to predict, easier to keep. And the way they get there is by breaking down the parts of you that make you whole. It sounds dark because it is, but it doesn't start that way. It never does. When someone who thrives on control meets a strong, grounded woman, they feel this gravitational pull. Her strength lights up something inside them, something hungry, something restless, something that whispers, if I can keep her, that means I'm powerful. They see her independence as a prize. Her resilience becomes a challenge. Her spirit becomes something to conquer instead of something to cherish. For a narcissist, breaking someone isn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It's strategy. It's survival. It's the only way they know how to feel secure. They don't create deep love. They enforce emotional dependency. That's the currency they understand. But they can't just tell her to depend on them. She's too strong for that. She's lived too much life. She trusts herself too deeply, so they find another way. The breaking doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, quiet enough to slip through her defenses. It begins with moments so small she barely notices. a raised eyebrow when she speaks her truth, a subtle hint that her needs are too much, a sideways comment that leaves her wondering if she misunderstood. He plants seeds of self-doubt like a gardener who knows exactly what he's growing. A woman once described it this way: it felt like someone was rearranging the furniture in my mind. Things were still there, but not where I left them. That's how breaking begins, not with a smash, but with a shift. Because if she starts questioning herself, he doesn't have to work as hard to question her. If she begins apologizing for things that aren't her fault, he doesn't have to take responsibility. If she starts believing she's hard to love, he becomes the hero who tolerates her. It's twisted, but it works because strong women often have the biggest hearts. They believe in fixing things. They believe in communication. They give grace, patience, empathy, and he uses every one of those gifts as leverage. Breaking someone makes them easier to keep, so he continues. The second phase is emotional exhaustion. Not all at once. He's too smart for that. Instead, he creates cycles of chaos followed by tenderness, arguments that come out of nowhere, then apologies that feel like salvation, long stretches of coldness followed by bursts of affection so intense she feels relief instead of joy. The human nervous system isn't built for that kind of whiplash. It gets tired, and when it gets tired, it becomes easier to influence. She starts adjusting herself to prevent conflict. She starts dimming her joy so he won't feel threatened. She starts regulating her words, her dreams, her decisions, anything to keep the peace, not because she's weak, because she's trying, and because she remembers the version of him that looked at her like she was the only light he'd ever known. People often assume a broken woman looks fragile, quiet, defeated, but sometimes she looks exactly the same on the outside. She still goes to work, she still laughs with friends, she still carries her responsibilities, but inside something is dimming. Something that used to burn fiercely, something that used to guide her. She starts missing pieces of herself and can't quite remember when they disappeared. And that's exactly what he wanted. A woman with a quiet spirit doesn't question as much. A woman who doubts herself depends more. A woman who's lost her spark becomes easier to keep because she forgets her power. There's this story about a woman who once ran marathons, started businesses, traveled alone across countries. When she met a narcissistic partner, he praised her ambition. He told her he admired her drive, but over time he began to chip away at it. He'd say she was reckless, irresponsible, selfish for wanting too much. Months later, she found herself staying home, silencing her ideas, shrinking her dreams, not because she wanted to, because somewhere along the way, she began believing her own fire was dangerous. Breaking someone doesn't mean destroying them. It means convincing them to destroy themselves. That's the part that hurts the most, the realization that the battle wasn't against him, it was inside her, and that he orchestrated it so she wouldn't even notice. It's important to understand that control isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes from a whisper, a sigh, a disappointed look, a subtle withdrawal of affection, a sudden shift in tone that leaves her unsettled. Emotional manipulation is almost silent. That's why it works. It rearranges reality so slowly that by the time she notices, she's already wrapped in it. A strong woman's heart doesn't break easily, but once it bends, once it begins to doubt its own rhythm, the narcissist steps back in with comfort, with warmth, with attention that feels like home. And she thinks, there he is. He's back. We're okay now. But he's not back. He never left. He was just adjusting the controls. Breaking someone makes them easier to keep because it disrupts the connection she has with herself. Once that's gone, he becomes the anchor she clings to. Even if he's the one who threw her into the storm, yet here's the quiet truth that always rises to the surface. Strength doesn't die. It goes dormant. It sleeps. It waits. It watches. And when it wakes up, when she finally hears her own voice again, it comes back sharper than before. Because even if she's been bent, stretched, silenced, controlled, her core is still her own. Strong women don't stay broken. They heal, they rebuild, they reclaim, and nothing terrifies a narcissist more than the moment she remembers who she is. Sometimes people imagine strength as something hard, metallic, untouched by the world. But real strength, especially in women, isn't about being unbreakable. It's about the choice to rise again, to stand up even when life has poured its weight onto their shoulders. And that choice is never small. It's never easy. It's not some triumphant soundtrack moment where everything magically falls into place. It's quieter, more intimate, and far more courageous than most people will ever see. You can watch someone go through heartbreak, betrayal, disappointment, the kind that knocks the wind out of a person, and somehow they still move forward, not perfectly, not gracefully, but they move, they find a way. And that's where you begin to understand the real foundation of strength. It's not in resistance, it's in resilience. It's in the decision to choose themselves again, even after someone tried to convince them that they didn't matter. I've seen women stand in the aftermath of situations that would have crushed others, relationships where they were torn down piece by piece, workplaces where their voice was dismissed, families where their boundaries were treated like inconveniences. And they'd tell themselves they could endure just a little more, that one day things would get better or the people around them would change. They give so much because their hearts are wired for empathy, for loyalty, for hope. But eventually there comes a moment, a quiet soul-level moment, when something shifts, when they realize that staying small to keep the peace is destroying the very fire inside them. It's in that moment they rise, not out of anger, though sometimes anger is there and it's justified, not out of pride, but out of recognition, a recognition that they deserve more than the scraps they've been handed, that their worth has been waiting for them to claim it, not for someone else to validate it. Rising becomes an act of self-respect, a declaration even if no words are spoken. I remember hearing a story about someone who walked away from a relationship where she spent years apologizing for things she didn't do, explaining emotions that were twisted against her, shrinking herself so someone else could feel tall. And one day she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just honest. She asked herself, when did I stop choosing me? And from that question came a new path. Not easy, not straightforward, but hers. That's the heart of it. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's sacred. It's reclaiming the pieces of your identity that were chipped away. It's remembering the dreams you set aside. It's reconnecting to the life you want to build, not the one someone tried to cage you inside. Strong women don't rise because they never bend. They rise because they refuse to stay folded. They rise because they've learned that healing isn't a return to who they were before, but a step towards someone wiser, deeper, clearer. They rise because they know that even if they walk alone for a while, that solitude is still better than living in the shadow of someone who benefits from their silence. And maybe that's the most inspiring thing about them. Their strength isn't loud, it isn't showy, it's the quiet, steady decision to choose themselves again and again, even after they've been made to question their worth. Every time they rise, they reaffirm a truth many forget. You don't need to be unbreakable to be powerful. You just need to keep choosing yourself. So why do narcissists fall for strong women? Because strength is beautiful. Because authenticity shines. Because independence is something they crave but cannot create. But here's the truth that matters most. A strong woman cannot be broken, only delayed. Her spirit may bend, but it does not vanish. Her voice may quiet, but it does not disappear. Her power may dim, but it never goes out. And when she steps back into the world, she becomes a light no one can take.